6th, 1944. After the Operation Overlord, President Roosevelt said, "They fight to end conquest. They fight to liberate. They fight to let justice arise and tolerance and goodwill among all God's people." Over 150,000 troops participated in the invasion of the beaches of Normandy in the north of France. 7,000 naval vessels, many of which were American naval vessels. They called it D-Day. By the end of June, over 850,000 troops landed on those beaches and officially invaded Western Europe, and the Allied forces started their path to victory in World War II, at least victory in Europe, as we've discussed before. Taking a couple steps back, several years before that, February 26, 1941, Hamilton Watch Company was awarded a contract for the ship's chronometer. This was a giant pocket watch. It was more like a clock than a pocket watch, but the ship's chronometer was mounted in this gimbal system below deck inside these beautiful wooden boxes, and Hamilton Watch Company was making these phenomenal timepieces for keeping time out on the open ocean. And the ship's chronometer was one of the most accurate timepieces ever made by any company, and it was specifically made by Hamilton for the U.S. Navy. And the contract was started February 26, 1941. Roughly a year later, in February 1942, 2 prototypes were delivered to the Navy. One of those first ship's chronometers was sent to President Roosevelt and was put in the map room of the White House. That's part of the significance of those. But the real significance of the ship's chronometers, which they made about 10,000 of, Hamilton did during World War II, was using the ship's chronometer, you would calculate longitude and you would figure out where you are in the open sea. And so knowing exactly what time it was and being very precise at keeping accurate time was wildly important to the U.S. Navy. And there's a really awesome book about this if you ever want to read the book called Longitude. Check it out. Whole story behind longitude and navigation and where it comes from and all that, why it's so important to have accurate timekeeping components. Back then, during World War II, you had the ship's chronometer below deck in your naval vessel, and there was a bunch of other timekeeping components on the warship, right? There was, clocks up on deck. There were obviously other pocket watches and other clocks around board, and you had to figure out how to match the time of the ship's chronometer to the time on all the other clocks and timekeeping components on board. So let's talk about the comparing watch, because you had to compare to that ship's chronometer and figure out what time it was on the rest of the ship. And let's dive into the watches. So I'm going to put the Vortic watch away for a second, and let's talk about the comparing watch. So this guy right here, as you can see, I just started the hacking sub-seconds feature, which this is one of, if not the only, pocket watch I've ever seen that. Most of the hacking watches that we see are the Hamilton 4992Bs, or those watches that were made for the U.S. Army Air Corps with the big sweeping central second hands. This one has a small seconds down here, but that is hacking. So when I pull the crown out, it's going to stop ticking. And when I pop it back in, she's going to take off. Now, this is the original comparing watch. And if I was the officer of the watch, I would take this below deck and compare it to the ship's chronometer. I would use the hacking feature, stop the pocket watch, make sure it's perfectly on time with the ship's chronometer below deck, start it, and then walk around the rest of the ship and reset any of the other clocks and timepieces on board to make sure that everything that keeps time on that naval vessel is compared to and on time with the ship's chronometer below deck. And yes, there was an officer of the watch. There was actually 2. There was a daytime person and a nighttime person. Let me get this. This is really the piece of history right there. So as you can tell, it says Bureau of Ships, U.S. Navy comparing watch. This one, 1942 originally. So This is a little piece of history inside here, made as literally called the comparing watch. When the U.S. Navy bought a ship's chronometer from Hamilton, it came with one of these. And that was really the only way to get it. So that is your comparing watch, original pocket watch. That's what it was used for. And that's our piece of history that is now inside this wristwatch. This is the Vortic comparing watch, second edition. This is the second year we've made this watch. As you can tell, original pocket watch, dial, hands, and movement inside of this. Let me flip it over so you can see the movement. This is the Hamilton 2974B. So this is a 17 joule version of those Hamilton movements that we use for our military edition. This is a 49 millimeter wristwatch. It's a very similar size to our military editions. And I'll see if I can hold it here where you can kind of see the difference. So this is a military edition on my wrist. That's your black dial. That's the Hamilton 4992B there. And this is the comparing watch. As you can tell, the Vortic military editions have the black 24-hour dials, and the comparing watch has this really sharp, beautiful white dial with big, bold numerals. The hands are just gorgeous on these. And then we decided to put a black strap on this year's comparing watch. But everything inside here is a true piece of American history. This is a piece of military Navy history inside of here. This is the actual comparing watch, and the odds, since they only made 10,000 roughly of these, the odds that these two, which this one's about to be turned into a wristwatch as well, the odds that these two pieces of history were off the coast of Normandy are extremely high. I mean, 90+% that these were used off the coast of Normandy on D-Day. And that's exactly why we're making it and releasing it this month, to celebrate and honor that big day in military history. And we're making 10 of these comparing watches this year. We call it the second edition. You can buy one of 10 on Thursday, June 27th at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. Again, that's Thursday, June 27th at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. Check them out on the website. We call it the comparing watch. Again, this year we have the original piece of history inside a stainless steel case, stainless steel crown, and our beautiful open case back with the Horween shell Cordovan black leather strap with stitching, 100% American-made piece of U.S. military history right here, specifically Navy history. So that's the history of the comparing watch, a brief history of World War II and D-Day. Check out our website. We just did a blog about D-Day with a lot more history on it. If you want to check that out, just head to vorticwatches.com and navigate to the blog, and you can see that. This is part of our military edition. We call this a special edition. We release these periodically, batches of 10 or so. If you want to learn more about the military edition of Vortic Watch Company, head to vorticwatches.com/military. You'll see all of this, and you can follow along. You can even get one of these t-shirts that I'm wearing right here. This is our military edition t-shirt. If I didn't mention it before, $500 from the sale of every military edition watch goes to the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative in Odessa, Delaware. And if you don't know what that is, basically it's a school for U.S. military vets to train how to be watchmakers and how to restore pieces of history just like this. Whether it's a pocket watch or a Rolex, they learn how to fix watches, and that school specializes in training U.S. military vets. So by investing in a Vortic military edition, you are directly impacting the past, the present, and the future of American watch manufacturing, and we thank you for that. See you next time.